Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the International People and Culture Week 2024. I'm Jonathan. I'm going to be your anchor today. I'm the coordinator for the PCA, which is a membership think tank for people professionals from across the globe who are actually transforming the workplace and championing better working. This is day 3 of the International People and Culture Week. We've had 2 fantastic sessions already. The first day, we focused on PR for HR. The second day, yesterday, we asked that rhetoric question. Is the future of HR, people, and culture. And today it's all about trends, topics, trailblazers, and basically transforming work. We've got a power-packed panel today, so don't go anywhere. And if you're joining us live on LinkedIn or YouTube, use the chat box, say hello, tell us where you're joining us from, tell us how you're transforming work. You can use the chat box, you can use the comment section on LinkedIn as well to throw in some comments, what the speakers are saying. You can throw in some questions, you can agree, you can disagree with them. It's all about a conversation today. For those of you who are joining us fresh and who have not been part of the last 2 days, the recordings of the last 2 days are still on LinkedIn, so you can go and grab those. We have had around 450 views of the first one, around 700 for yesterday's session. So let's knock today's one out of the park and get to 1,000 views because we got 4 fantastic guests who are joining us. For more information on the PCA, you can join us either as an individual member or as a corporate partner member. All you need to do is drop me a line at info@peopleprofessionals.org. You should get some more information at the kicker at the bottom of your screen. So anything you need to know about the PCA, of course, is something that I'm happy to share with you over the course of this session. But the International People and Culture Week is not just from May 1st to 7th. It's going to be something we celebrate all through the year. We're going to be talking, highlighting people professionals who are really making an impact at our workplaces. But the only thing left live now is on the 7th of May, where they're going to introduce and announce the International People and Culture Awards. So for those of you who have not signed up for that, once again, go to our LinkedIn page and you'll be able to watch that live. You can also get involved as a viewer and as a participant. You can take the People and Culture Practitioners Questionnaire, put out a 10-point questionnaire. We're asking you about how you have transform the workplace, what have been your successes, your challenges, and we're getting to a lot of fantastic insights from people professionals from different parts of the globe. So once again, drop me a line at info@peopleprofessionals.org and I can send you some more information. If you're not following us on LinkedIn yet, this is the time to do that. We are really going for it. We're leaping into people and culture this year. But today, it's all about topics, trends, and trailblazers. And before I hand it over, of course, to Julie, who's going to be our moderator, I want to say hi to Natalie, who is, of course, an HR consultant, a public speaker, blogger, and director at Reeboks HR. She's also, of course, HR most influential personality as well, and an author. Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Natalie. I'll also say a big hello to Elisa Smith, who's, of course, the Chief Human Coach at Cura Human Choices. Celestial Coach, and of course, a fractional CHRO. Thank you so much for joining us, Elisa.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
A big hello, of course, to Alicia Parchment, of course, who is the HR business partner at the Salt Systems, educational HR YouTuber, and creative HR talks with Lish. So, of course, the HR CV writer as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Alicia.
Thank you so much for having me.
And of course, holding this whole conversation together is Julie Turney, who's of course a big supporter of the PCA. She's a founder and a chief engagement officer, that's the CEO, at HR at Heart Consulting. Of course, she's been helping out burnt out and frustrated HR professionals to take control of their careers. She's, of course, an HR disruptor, TEDx speaker, public speaker, and of course, the host of HR Sound Off podcast show. Julie, thank you so much once again for joining us.
Good morning. It's my absolute pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Before I hand over the virtual stage to you, also big hello to David Little, who is the president of the PCA, the founder of peopleandculture.com, and of course, the CEO of the TCM Group and the author of Managing Conflict and Transformational Culture. David, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sure you have a few opening remarks before we hand the stage over to Julie and the speakers.
I do, Jonathan. Jonathan, thank you so much, and thank you to what sounds like it's going to be an incredible conversation. And it's my favourite form of prose is alliteration, of course. So transforming work, trends, topics, trailblazers, all the T's. Cannot wait to dig in those. And I'll be having a cup of tea whilst I'm listening to the conversation. So looking forward to that. But no, day 3 of International People and Culture Week, and I think it's fair to say we did not expect it to be this successful and so much fun, so enjoyable, and so insightful. And these panel conversations have been so rich, such a joy to listen to them and to be part of them. So now I'm going to fade into the background. I'm going to say a great big thank you to our panelists. Please do, if you're listening to us live, share your thoughts, share your experiences on LinkedIn. Yesterday, it was red hot. It was fantastic. So please do share your thoughts. And of course, if you've got questions for the panelists, please do put those onto the comments function, and we will come to those. But no, Jonathan, Julie, panelists, thank you. Natalie, Alicia, Alyssa, thank you so much. Over to you, Julie. Have a great conversation.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you, Jonathan. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to our topic today. We're covering session 3, topics, trailblazers and trends in the people and culture space. I'm sure that you have your favorites. So as we start to go through this conversation, feel free to share yours in the comments. We'll be happy to take a look. But we're here today to start this beautiful conversation and just raise some awareness around some of the amazing topics, trailblazers, and trends in people and culture. I'm going to kick things off by starting with asking the ladies just to share a little bit more about themselves. I know Jonathan did a slight introduction, but I'm going to get everyone to just introduce themselves a little bit more, share something with you. And then we're going to kick off with topics. We're going to talk about what are some of the HR topics that have us excited in the people and culture space. So I'm going to start off at the bottom of my screen and go with Alyssa. Alyssa, over to you.
Thank you, Julie. It's wonderful to be here. I serve as the Chief Human of Cure Human. That's my own small business consulting firm. I'm based out of the United States. I have a decade of experience in human resources, half that time spent in my hometown in New York City, and the other half based in North Carolina. Over the years, that has grown progressively, and what I love about human resources is that it's an ever-changing field. And my opportunity to be here with you all is really to be ideation, creativity, innovation. That fuels our work so much. So very grateful for the opportunity. I also stay involved volunteering. One of my passion areas is IED. So I serve as the VP of IED for a local HR SHRM chapter. And I'm also one of the board members for a local nonprofit, DRNC, Disability Rights of North Carolina, of disability inclusion. So thanks again for having me, Julie. And I'm looking forward to hearing from our other panelists.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Alicia, over to you.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for having me today. So I am Alicia. I am the founder of HR Talks with Leash. So I support aspiring and professionals in HR to help them to develop on their career paths. I've been in HR now for about 3.5 years, and I actually started out as a HR intern, and I have progressed my way up to a HR business partner at the moment. And I currently work in a software organization. And I am really passionate, I would say, about career mobility, DE&I, and also just the workforce of the future and empowering them in workplaces. So that's a little bit about me. I also recently now volunteer with the CIPD at my local branch as a student engagement and communications lead. So yes.
Awesome. Congrats to you. Well done.
Thank you.
Natalie, over to you.
Okay, so I've been in HR. Next year, I'll be celebrating my 20th year in the profession. And I have had such a wonderful, wonderful career, I would say. So it's been an absolute roller coaster. Like Alyssa and Alicia, I have worked extensively to find out what I am passionate about within the profession. And I love its variation and the variety you get with different queries that come in every day. I founded my own company in 2020, so Reeboks HR has been trading over 4 years now, which is incredible to reach this milestone. But I also have a side passion, which is supporting HR students through their qualifications, and I do that on a voluntary basis. So in 2020, I wrote and published the book Launch Your HR Career, and that was to inspire students to keep going, to develop their resilience, and to be able to be inspired by the situations that they go through. So every day is a learning curve. Again, thank you very much for having me, Julian. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, ladies. I know you guys all bring your experience and your knowledge to the space, and I think that this was great for you guys to come together and have this conversation with me today. As I said, I think we're going to kick off today with topics. Let's start with some of the HR topics that have you guys excited in the people and culture space right now. What are some of the topics that you see that you've read or experienced that you think we in the people and culture space need to be very aware of right now? I'm going to start with Alicia.
Oh, great. Thank you, Julie. So I would say that one of the topics that at the moment is something we really need to be concentrating on in the people space, for me, is internal mobility. I think internal mobility is something that when it comes to developing within your career in an organization, I think it's important to be able to understand how to have certain conversations with your manager around what does your career path look like, and what do you want it to look like in the future? And if you want to change into a different career path, how can I have like an open discussion with the person that is managing me currently? Because one thing that I've noticed in my work is I'll have employees and individuals speak to me and say, sometimes my manager doesn't want me to leave my current position because they see and appreciate the talent that I bring, and they don't want to lose that. But it's like, when it comes to your career and what you would like to do, you are in control, and I think you should have that ownership. So I think having open conversations and transparent conversations about what your career can look like in the future is really important to me, and something that I'm an advocate for. And I would say promoting internal mobility from a HR professional standpoint is important in that sense. So what can we do to support our managers and our employees with trying to have those conversations? So I think there's a lot of things that we can look at to break down in terms of what that internal mobility looks like. So skills development, upskilling. How can we create transition plans potentially if we want to move from one career to another? And also networking in the organization as well. How can we understand more about what our colleagues are doing in different departments? Sometimes we don't understand what's going on in every section. So how do we get ourselves to come together and talk about that? So for me, I see that as having, lunch and learns, certain webinars that you can attend in maybe all hands calls that happen across the business, where you just talk a little bit more about what you do in your day to day and have that spotlight on them. So I think that that's something that we need to look into a lot more, because I think developing our talent is important, especially I would say for the generation as the Gen Z and the millennials. That one thing that's very important for us is career development and understanding how can we grow within a business. So how do we kind of understand what we can do more of in that capacity? So that's what I would say is a topic that, I'm very passionate about at the moment.
I can see the passion in you for it as well. I definitely agree with you. And I would say yes to internal mobility and career mapping. I think, as you mentioned, one of the things that I think is very important for us as HR is making sure that we have those conversations with leaders about what good leadership looks like. And I really emphasize that good leadership means that you are willing to let your people grow and let them go.
Yeah,
I know that you've had a part in their journey of them becoming whatever it is that they want to become. So I would put this to like Emily in Paris. If you've ever watched Emily in Paris.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So like when her boss says to her, "I'm putting you in my shoes," that was like a pivotal statement for me in the show, because I think that's what good leadership is about. when you give your people the opportunity to develop and move on, so that you can say, I had a part in this person's amazing career, and then giving them the opportunity to be able to show you what a career looks like in the organization. I love the part that you mentioned about lunch and learns and helping people to understand the business. I think a lot of times employees cannot connect the dots. They just think that this is what I do and this is the department that I work in, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to an organization. And so you being able to understand and how to connect those dots is really important as well. I'm going to ask Natalie and Alyssa to chime in if you have anything that you want to share on this particular topic of internal mobility.
I think I work very much in a different space. So I advise small businesses on how to manage their people processes better, but also how to be better employers, which is really quite tricky, because sometimes there are some frustrations about the disjointment, I would call it, in expectations. So Alicia did refer to millennials and Gen Z. I would probably describe myself more as a Gen X millennial hybrid. So I was born in the 80s, and my expectations of the workplace was you get yourself a job, you work hard, you get rewarded for that, and you climb the career ladder. That's generally what was kind of fed to us, is that the harder you work, the better the output. And sometimes it's quite difficult to come out of that mindset. And I think that there's differing expectations on both sides. So I think employees also have to have an open mind about what the abilities and capabilities are within that organization. So for example, if people are going to work from a large corporate company where there's lots of reward and lots of benefits, and everyone works together as a team, and you have pizza Fridays and all of these things to try and create a positive and inclusive culture where everyone gets to join in. It's not reflected in small businesses, which make up the UK's biggest employer. So they're dealing with really strapped budgets. They don't have the opportunity or access to the same level of reward and recognition schemes as large-scale corporates. So the expectations are much more, they're a lot less, and they're incredibly different from one to the other. So a lot of the time, I would probably say about 90% of my time is spent managing these expectations within these small organizations. So I think that there needs to be accountability on both sides, from both the employer and the employee, to understand that not all organizations work in the same way. Very much like that career path where you work hard, you get promoted, you get rewarded, and then you work on to the next bit. But I think there's so much pressure these days on people, not just within organizations as a whole, but on HR itself, massively. And that shines through your work, Julie, and I really admire the work that you do by highlighting what that reality looks like for HR professionals. But with all of this pressure to be able to, okay, well, if I've got promoted and I've got this job title now, well then if I work harder, I can get this job title now. And then, that doesn't feel like I'm good enough, and I need to then go to that point. You've got all of these factors that come in, which have a detrimental effect long term. But ultimately, that impacts, culture touches everything within an organization. And especially in small businesses, if you're working as part of a small team, you know that there's nowhere to hide. And you know if somebody is having an off day. People, I feel, are a lot more in tune with their workforce in smaller businesses. So whilst the recognition and the benefits and progression opportunities are not there as readily available as large-scale corporates, actually there is so much opportunity to get to know how to run a business.
Absolutely.
And to be a real valued part of that, because as we know from the CIPD surveys, and lots of other workplace surveys, that actually that sense of belonging means more than a salary increase.
Yes, absolutely.
So, that's really where it sits at the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Natalie. And I love the perspective that you've brought here, because I think a lot of times we think about bigger companies, but the picture is that when you look on a holistic perspective, you have small business and you have big business, and understanding what each of those is able to achieve when it comes to mobility in the workplace is a very important factor. And I'm glad that you were able to share with us, that small businesses make up the majority of the UK business population. And so understanding how we navigate being able to motivate and retain talent in that space is very important. Thank you for sharing that. Alyssa, what are your thoughts on internal mobility?
Yes, I heard so much that resonated in what was shared with both Natalie and Alicia. And what stood out to me is when we consider an employee experience in that life cycle, we're spending more time in those other pieces that maybe have been historically neglected in that experience. So Cura Human focuses on caring for your whole human. And we take that vulnerability, and that's what Alicia's talking about, right? And you're able to have this very open, honest, intimate conversation with your employer that, again, historically, they have not paid for. To Natalie's point, you come, you show up, you do the work, you leave. They weren't making space for the human. And when we think about the feeling side of it, so much has been taught to us, even as people leaders. I have heard, don't bring your emotions to work as an HR professional, right? How do I and let it go and make these very rigid boundaries when they can be a bit softer, they can be a bit fluid, and that creates enjoyment in the work. It creates an engaging experience for everybody involved. So those two things stood out to me. It's also Small Business Week in the States this week. And so I hear a lot of alignment as well, because we are in that supplier diversity chain. And oftentimes what's attracting us for the talent, especially for millennials and the next generation, is because we don't have the career hierarchy. They don't want that. They don't want to climb the ladder. They want a very integrated, well-balanced life experience. And I can't fault them for that. I agree with it a lot. And so we think about the identities. One of the biggest challenges for me in pairing what was said is, yes, we have 75% millennials. They're not in leadership. They're not in the C-suite. There's a reason for that. Yeah. And we have to have an open conversation with leaders about what is holding them back from putting these leaders in these positions. They're well equipped. To Alicia's point, they're well trained, they're upskilled. And why is it that we can't see more of them? If we don't embrace them and empower them right now, we're setting up the organization for failure. We're setting up the culture for failure. We're setting up the people for failure. And that's the worst scenario we can imagine in our field, and that pains me. So I really appreciate the comments that have been made. Thanks.
Yes, legacy is everything. And I really think that from a corporate perspective, we really need to start looking at legacy a little bit different. And how do we really mentor and coach and support the generations that are coming into the workforce now and set them up for success to be good leaders, but also to just move things forward in developing their careers in a way that really shines through and makes a lot of sense and makes people feel like, yes, I absolutely want to be a part of this organization and what they're trying to achieve. So great start to our conversation today, Alicia, by bringing in that internal mobility. Definitely is a very important topic for us to really reimagine and rediscover in people and culture. And it takes everyone, right? Culture is not an HR thing. I think that's the first thing we really need to understand. It is not an HR thing. It is everyone's business, and everyone plays their part. And if we all play our part well together, anything is possible. Yeah. Alyssa, since you finished us off on internal mobility, start us off with your topic.
Oh, I want to talk about technology. I think there's a lot of assumptions that we make in HR about what we can and can't do when it comes to technology. And with AI coming on the scene out here, SHRM has really embraced it with their staff and has encouraged them to use it. I know in smaller organizations, we may not have the funding, to Natalie's point, to invest in that type of technology. So I would love to hear from you all in the panel what's working, what might not be working, and what the opportunity might be with us moving forward.
Nice. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Natalie muted right away, so go for it.
I had to unmute because I had to mute because my phone was ringing. I didn't want it to interrupt the stream, so I do apologise. There's never a day off here. So, in terms of technology, I think it's really relevant in how people even prefer to work. these days. Now, I couldn't do without my technology in my business personally, purely because it streamlines so much of what I do. For example, if I have a client that wants to know how many times they've used our service this month, I can bring that to life, because that all filters into the customer experience from us. And I think employees expect a similar level of being able to make life just that little bit easier. The one thing that does keep coming up, and I will always play devil's advocate in these situations, what I keep getting at the moment from my clients is people writing their resignations via chat.
GPT.
And it's so they don't even, there's no effort that goes into it. I think people do struggle how to articulate what they need to say, but I don't think it brings that level of authenticity that people like when they are working together collaboratively. So for example, you go on LinkedIn and it is just a wall of chat posts. It's like you have to filter through to find the real people.
Yeah.
Now, I know that it makes life easier and it's great, but in this day and age, actually, technology should be there to assist us. It shouldn't be there to be us. And it's really, I think that that's actually having a negative effect on cultures within workspaces, because that manager said, well, why didn't they just tell me how they felt really about how they were going to leave? So it is that accountability factor, is that yes, technology absolutely has its place, AI has its place, but I don't think it should be replacing how people express themselves, which I'm finding really quite odd. And even when there's workplace conflict, I'll just go to chat. How do I respond to my manager in X, Y, Z scenario? So instead of people saying how they actually feel and trying to find a resolution, it's like, right, take that. And the manager's sat there and they're going, what did I do wrong? I've done everything I can to try and help this person. So I think there does need to be a lot of the policies I'm writing at the moment are tailored AI policies and fair usage in the workplace, which is interesting work. So, but again, I think with certain systems, it can make our lives so much easier. So, for example, a HR system that we use, it has a burnout indicator on it. So you can see if employees aren't taking enough annual leave, and how do we help them to take the right level of leave. So it can be used in really positive ways, but I think it's how businesses outline those expectations and how it should be utilised.
Yeah. I love this topic because I think more and more I'm seeing a lot of this, how do we write, from an HR perspective, I've seen, how do we write policies using ChatGPT? You better be careful. That's what I'm going to say, because ChatGPT may not be aware of every piece of legislation that sits out there. And a lot of policies are driven by law or some form of legislation. And so I think it's really important for us to be able to recognize how we navigate between the use of AI from that perspective. But I mean, when you think about it, we have been using AI for a very long time in HR, right? In tech. Because if you think about your HRIS system and how it's automated to prompt for certain things, that's a form of AI. And then when we're saying, oh, it's Alicia's birthday today, that's a form of AI, right? So we have all of these different prompts that actually exist already. I think for those, when you talk about the small businesses that exist, and I'm speaking from a global context, it's important to recognize that everyone doesn't have an HRIS system. Everyone does not have an LMS system. Everyone does not have a payroll system. And they really are working from Google Sheets or Excel. And I feel this is where we need to see that evolution, because I'm still gobsmacked every time when I talk to an HR professional who is still navigating HR from a Google Sheet, because the business doesn't have the money for an HRIS system. And I think the evolution of things like HRIS systems and even LMS, I am a huge believer in the University of YouTube. I think that it works very well. There are lots of good videos on there that you can actually help people to develop and grow using if you don't have a budget for an LMS system. YouTube, right? And then I think also there are lots of companies out there now who are offering free versions of their HRIS technology. And so I think just doing the research and tapping into those things is really important as well. That's my 5 cents. Alicia, over to you.
Thank you. So a lot of amazing points have been mentioned today here about AI, especially ChatGPT. I agree on the authenticity side with ChatGPT. I honestly think that AI is something we are going to continuously see. It's going to grow in years to come. So we're not going to be able to get rid of it. We're going to have to learn to work with it. That's how I see it. So I think when it comes to putting in certain prompts, so I know, Natalie, you mentioned someone wrote their resignation on ChatGPT. And the same thing happens with like CVs and things. People will write, and they'll just tell ChatGPT, write a CV or write me a resignation. I think we need to get training on how to utilize the system to support us and assist us. Just like you said, Natalie, I think it's important that we utilize it for assistance. So for me, I see ChatGPT as like a place that can support me with ideation, thinking about ideas and how to structure things. So I feel like it's better to put in prompts to ask how you would go about maybe organizing your resignation and what should I be thinking about when putting that together. So then you can go away and actually put the thought into writing it and making it more personal. So just on that point, I just wanted to mention that because I think it's important for us to learn how to utilize it to assist us properly. So much more training needs to happen from there. In terms of HRIS systems and things, I am kind of going a little bit back to internal mobility here, just because I see the value in internal talent marketplaces. So having a system, a portal where everything in relation to career mobility and conversations is in one place to help the user experience for individuals in organizations to understand what is available for them and the possibilities. And within that, I do believe AI has a major part to play because it really does support with potentially if you want to go from one place to another, based on the skill set that I've got in the system on what it is that I'm good at already, what skills I have in my job, how can you help me to think about what's the next step? And that those systems I think are amazing to really be supportive in your kind of journey and understanding what is possible. So with internal talent marketplace, I'm very, very passionate about this because I think not a lot of companies do have this. A lot of things are happening in silos. So you've got like, you'll have a portal potentially for job opportunities in one place. Then you'll have something where you can you talk about all the skills that you have in your current role at the moment, a profile in one place. Then you've got a portal on write about your career journey and aspirations in one place, and it's not connected. And I think that technology in future, and it's already happening now in some organizations. I know with internal talent marketplaces, this was a new, more so of a new phenomenon from 2019. So after in the COVID crisis, it was something that has been pushed more just because of how we are now moving to more technology due to just how the world is changing. And I know I read a statistic somewhere saying that by 2030, about maybe 50% of organizations will have this more implemented into their organizations. So I think that there is so much more room for technology helping us advance as HR professionals to support us with making sure we can utilize our time in other areas where we're actually having that connection with the people, with managers, with employees, and the systems support us with tasks that we've been doing that we don't necessarily need to do because technology is there to support us. So that's my take on it.
Yes. It is there to assist, not to take over, right? HR jobs are going nowhere, and it's just important for us to know how to leverage the technology and the artificial intelligence so that we don't have to do the mundane tasks every day, and we can really focus on people and culture. Absolutely. Natalie, what is your topic? We are 33 minutes in, but we're going to get this done. I'm really enjoying this conversation. Natalie, tell us, what is your topic that you think we should be aware of in the people and culture space today?
I think after the pandemic, we've seen a huge shift in how people recruit talent into their organisations. It's no longer a tick box exercise. It is actually who is the right fit for our organisation and who is capable of doing the job that we're asking, that we're recruiting for. So there's been a real emphasis, and it comes into we keep going back to it. Is this internal mobility? But ultimately, it's one of those that's really at the centre of things at the moment, and organisations are really changing their attitudes. They don't want a constant churn of recruiting people for them to only leave 3 months later because the job isn't right for them. They've spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying to recruit people into the organisation and to attract this talent. So it's more of a, as we say, culture touches everything. So you have to really scale everything back and have a look at what you're doing in terms of mastering the basics to be able to be attractive to those that are actually looking to work for an organisation just like yours. So there are certain things that people, I don't believe that it's all about what policies and what the values are. It's actually how you operate and how you conduct yourself as a business, which is becoming more important. And I had the same sad experience as what Elise has had. You're told by a fellow HR professional, just suck it up, get on with it. And I've been told by some really senior people in HR that, you just don't fit into HR, Natalie. You don't belong. You don't wear a suit to work every day. You're not a typical HR person. And I'm sat here 20 years later with my own business. I've published a book. I go out there and I try and do my best to inspire other people to get a job you don't have to fit in. You really don't have to fit in to do well and to be successful, which is where I think there is this kind of off-put from the people entering into the workforce that Alicia was describing earlier, is because they feel that they don't fit into the mold that people are looking for. So businesses do need to have a bit more of an open mind and a solid strategy as to how you're going to be going out and recruiting people, rather than, okay, well, we've got to tick XYZ box to be attractive to certain demographics. And I just don't think that works. It needs to be appealing and inclusive to everybody, rather than, ticking boxes because they feel that they have to. And I think that's going to be a pivotal point, and I think we'll start to see that towards the end of this year.
So, that was a heavy one, Natalie.
Sorry.
No, that's fine for a Friday morning. But what I heard you say in there was hiring right the first time. Our social responsibility as organizations, understanding that we have a connection where community is concerned, right? So as we build culture, we build community. And I remember hearing Simon Sinek say in a presentation many years ago, community is about people with shared values and a shared set of skills that come together to achieve a common goal. And I feel like that's the essence of culture, right? That we're all coming together to achieve a common goal, but we all have a shared set of skills and a shared set of values that brings us together to help us work together and achieve that. And I think that speaks to the last word that I heard in what you were saying was authenticity. And I think a lot of times organizations struggle with being authentic. Is that because there are so many different personalities in the workplace, and then they don't know how to be authentic as an organization? And I think one of the places that I always encourage people to look when they're looking for a job, I always encourage people, go look at the organizations, if they have it, annual business report, because that tells you a lot about the organization and what they're trying to achieve, how they're trying to achieve it, and through which platforms and portals they're trying to move through to achieve those things. But you can see a company's social responsibility there. And I feel that especially in Gen X and millennials, they're doing a lot more research because it helps them understanding the purpose of the organization. So even as a small business, your website should say who you are and speak to your culture and your values and those kind of things, it's a twofold thing, right? We have a responsibility as an organization, and employees or potential employees have a responsibility as candidates to navigate the candidate experience as well. So I feel those were the words that I was hearing as you were speaking. I hope I got that right.
I think it's a bit just about being vulnerable, isn't it?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
people don't like being vulnerable. So
No.
if you're encouraging from the top down to say, well, actually, why do we wear company uniforms? Or, little changes can make a really big difference. And they're so overlooked.
Yes.
So yeah, having that courage to be vulnerable is really essential.
And I feel also too, just to add to that, is people being able to say what they want. I think a lot of times we forget. I don't know what happens between school and then entering the world of work, where we kind of seem to forget that now we're dealing with adults and not children. And so being able to ask people what kind of experience they want is something that should matter to us. Like, what do you want to see on the walls? Do you want to see a set of words that mean absolutely nothing? Or do you want to have a space and a culture where people feel like they are psychologically safe to share ideas and feel safe to have conversations about how they develop and grow their careers? Because a lot of times when if we're not creating the space and the psychological safety for people to do that, it won't be done. It won't be done. So if I could give you a resource for that, I would say The Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson is an absolutely fantastic book. If you're trying to create psychological safety in your organization to build good culture so that you can be vulnerable and you can be authentic as an organization, everyone should read that book. That's just my 5 cents on it. I want to touch quickly on trailblazers. Who are the people in this people and culture space that you view as trailblazers? I think I brought 3 amazing trailblazers together this morning. So if anyone was going to ask me who are my top 3 trailblazers, I would say you 3, because what you're all doing in your spaces, I think is absolutely phenomenal, and it's definitely needed. And so I really appreciate all 3 of you for what you're bringing to the table. So I'm going to ask Natalie, Alicia, Alyssa, in that order. Tell us about your trailblazers. Who are you bringing to the table today for others here today to go and research?
Gosh, there are so many, aren't there?
I know, right? But you've got one.
I can only have one. Well, I've actually got 2. I'm being inclusive by having a man and a woman. So there we go. So I really admire the work of Steve Brown. And I've always loved his work. He is so positive, and he really puts that energy into HR, and I just love it. And the work that you do, Julie, it inspires so many people to be able to be themselves, but also to say, I'm HR and I don't feel right. And that space is so valuable. So thank you for everything that you do for our community, Julie. And thank you for having me with you today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Do you know, Steve Brown is one of my favorite people. He is over 6 feet tall, but he is the most gentle giant you've ever seen in your life. And he does such brilliant work. And I love all of his books, and I always recommend them for every HR professional. If you're now starting out in HR and you're looking for something to read to get a good knowledge of growing your career in HR, read all 3 of Steve Brown's books. Absolutely. Yes. Alicia, trailblazer.
So I'm going to actually say Josh Bursin. I actually really like Josh Bursin because I listen to his podcasts, and he has just some amazing outlooks on like transforming HR and like what the trends and what it looks like, what we should be doing for the future. And I've got so many nuggets from that I have utilized myself in certain conversations that I've had at work, and just how I I navigate the space when I'm speaking to aspiring HR professionals as well. So he's actually someone that I really look up to. I would also say, so a couple of people on the call, Natalie, I've actually been following you for years. I've got your book. So when you mentioned it, I was like, I need to say this to you, but I actually have your book, How to Start a Career in HR. I actually read that before I started my YouTube channel. I think you released it then. Don't quote me, because I started my YouTube channel in April 2020, so I'm not sure. But around that time anyway, I did buy the book because I was just starting out in my career, and it really, really helped me just to see like your journey. And I am actually someone who wants to have my own consultancy. So I've been following you, your experiences, everything that you've been doing. I've been a silent follower. So I just want to thank you so much for what you've been doing for the community, especially for the students. Like, it's just something that, you've really inspired me and helped me to be where I am today. So,
Oh, wow.
And Julie,
Natalie, don't cry.
Time as well.
Oh, wow. Natalie was not expecting that, were you, Nat?
Not at all. No, thank you. That's really, really kind of you. And the inspiration behind the book was people just like you, and for people that didn't feel that they would fit into a HR career or told that they weren't good enough. And it is there to really inspire that. And it will continue to inspire other people who may feel that way. So that means the world. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Josh Burson, absolutely. And that, see, I knew it when I put you three together. I knew it. Alyssa, Trailblazers.
So I'm really hesitant to share a name. And I paused in this group because so many times we hear a name and then we attach that identity, those values. So I think what I want to pose to the group is that feelings base of it. When you connect with somebody, what Alicia just described anecdotally, of reading this book and connecting with Natalie on a human level, on a feelings basis, that drives her values. It just describes how she's developing that identity and gives her permission to do that and spend that time and that inner work with herself. So I love that idea. And so I don't want to label it, because when you put a name out there, people are like, well, I have to like this person, right? If I had to say one, it's probably Anessa. I'm going to say her first name. Yes.
Yes.
You, Julie.
Anessa Fike. Yeah.
And of course you as well, Julie, because many people don't know this, but I have been to Julie in the space of I am burnt out as an HR professional. And to get where I am to be chief human at Cure Human right now, it was seeing people be quote unquote successful and feeling like I had to push through as the human representative, right? We hold a lot of space for all of our staff on a continual basis, from the new hire starting all the way to the leader who's been leading for years and still suffers with imposter syndrome and doubt. We make space for all of it. And that's not including the space for our other identities as mothers, as supporters, whatever you do outside of the physical work in your career, that makes you who you are too. So I did want to touch on that and say at Cure Human, we spend time serving the underserved with intentionality. What I heard today, I love when our HR people get together, and I was so excited about this call because the reinforcement and the affirmation that I want and I need to fill up my cup to keep doing this work that I love so much comes from this space. At the same time, we know what needs to be dismantled. There's no question about it from a systems level. You all have touched on it, the inner mobility. And again, what is at a systems level and an equity standpoint that we're going to change over time? It's not going to happen overnight. We recognize that. I think the staff recognizes that too, but we're trying. And trying is so incredibly important, because once we give up, the culture will define itself. And it defines itself in a very robust, in-your-face way when you don't cultivate it. And to Natalie's point, and Julie, you made it too, the behavior and the conduct associated with that. When I'm crafting and writing a policy for an organization, I don't just say, well, these are the laws and that's it. I think about, what is this leader's vision? What are they trying to get the staff to do? What do they want them to feel with that work? And then make the policy. So we're never in a silo. And I think it's really an opportunity for us to see a little bit of ourselves in each other And that's also what I heard on this call. I've not met most of you in person, and I felt you. I felt connected to you, and I can't wait until we meet in person. So that's the power of these conversations, really. And I really appreciate you asking that question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for sharing that. I feel like I've got all the warm feels inside of me now from that. But again, I'm a resource person, and I feel like it's so important to share resources when you get them. And I remember reading this book that I think really touched me, and it's called Solve for Happy. And I think it's one of the, and as I move into the topics of HR or people and culture, is how do we create happy workplaces? Because I feel ultimately people and culture is tied to happiness. And how do we create spaces where people can feel happy? But I think that a lot of times we're just so focused on, we have organizations who are just focused on the work of it all and not the people of it all. And I feel this is where we really need to change that, right? I read this book, Solve for Happy, which was written by Mo Godot, who was a former CEO of Google. And he wrote this book based on the life lessons that he learned from his son before he died at 21. So it's about loss, but it's also about this equation of what we're all dancing around in life all the time, right? We have a strong responsibility to ourselves to make ourselves happy. But when we enter the workplace, we have a responsibility to ourselves to release that happiness in such a way that it's real and authentic and helps our organizations to create a culture where people belong, where people feel like they belong, and where people feel safe. And tied to that is where people feel that they can, and I think Alicia started us off perfectly with this, being able to just develop and grow in an organization and be able to feel safe enough to say, I want to be able to, this is what I'm aspiring to, and have a leader that says, I'm going to help you get there. This is what I'm going to do to help you get there. And I think also having a space where people feel that they are able to say, this is what I don't want in my experience with this organization, and this is what I do want in my experience with this organization. So I had a really, I want to say, life-changing moment that happened to me in March. So I attended this conference in Vegas called Transform. If you've never been to Transform, you all need to go in Vegas next year. Let's set a goal. But there was a conversation happening there that I've never experienced before, tied to people and culture. And the experience that was being given was by a gentleman who was an alcoholic. His wife was an alcoholic, and they both worked in the food and beverage industry. He recognized that his wife was an alcoholic, but it never clocked for him that he was an alcoholic until he Googled what an alcoholic was. And when he was going to get help for his wife, he then realized, in looking at the definition on Google, he was an alcoholic as well, and then went to get help for himself. In getting that help for himself and his wife left the food and beverage industry because she was like, I just can't be around alcohol. The pandemic came and they were stuck in the house together, and they were like, what are we going to do? Because we can't drink. And they decided to make their own non-alcoholic bitters. And it sparked a conversation for him around inclusion for recovering alcoholics in the workplace. We talk a lot about how do we create spaces where people can mix and mingle, and everything is about drinks. And I know in the UK, it's a pub culture. In the US, it's a club culture. In the Caribbean, it's a rum shop culture. But the truth of the matter is, in order for everyone to feel like they belong, how do they get to a space where we can eat and drink together and it's not all about alcohol? I blew my mind because I'd never, ever thought about inclusion from an alcoholic's perspective. We don't know who has it, right? And for me, that just completely blew my mind. Are we really thinking about everyone as we build culture Are we really thinking about everyone? The alcoholics, the non-alcoholics, the people who've just chosen, we don't want to drink alcohol. We've never drank it. We don't want it. But we still want to be able to mix and mingle. And I don't want to have to drink water. Right? So like, how do we drink? How do we create mocktails or create an environment where people feel like they can still be adults and have adult drinks when we're trying to be together?
Yeah.
Blew my mind.
It's a great example.
It's true, isn't it? So if you're having a good day, oh, let's have a drink. If you're having a bad day, oh, let's cheer ourselves up. Let's have a drink. It's the same with anything, isn't it? And having unfortunately lost, relations by marriage to alcoholism, it is one of those where it's so secretive. So secretive. So by being aware and inclusive, by having alternatives around even work events and things like that, really, really important for people.
Absolutely.
I do feel, Julie, in the experience that you shared, that's the responsibility we have as people leaders, because again, we understand the whole person. It's a unique space that we get to operate in. And when we consider what are the identities that might have led to a person to make that kind of choice, sometimes it is I'm masking. Sometimes it is this is not a right job fit for me. This culture is not, and I'm just trying to power through it. I'm trying to endure the best that I can. And I need those indicators. And often HR is that space in one form or another. I'm sure we've heard stories that come full circle where someone says, I didn't know it at the time, but when I went to you, you helped me figure out what I needed. And what I needed to do was to say no to that after hours at the pub and just go home and read my book instead. And that's good to me. And it felt good to me. So on a very practical level, a book that stands out to me in leadership as that shift comes is The Conscious Leadership, because it's being aware on a personal, individual, org level. And that's what's going to make you create that inclusive environment for everyone. So great ending. Sounds like.
Yes, that's fantastic. Wow. David is going to say something.
Wow. What a wonderful, fabulous conversation. It's just picking up the conversation there around alcoholism. If we look at the sort of traditional systems in HR, very process-driven, retribution, we might pick that issue up in mitigation in a disciplinary process. So in a hearing, an individual might mitigate the behaviour, and that mitigation doesn't really hit the ears of other people because they're offering that in confidential mitigation, and that impacts on the outcome of a disciplinary procedure. And that's the real issue I have with these sort of formal and rigid systems and processes, because it becomes very reactive. It becomes the information is shared in a very kind of closed way at the very end of the day. But what you've opened up today in the panel has just been it's fantastic. It's this incredible openness and this desire to connect and to learn and to grow and develop and understand and be together. And the conversation that you were sharing, all of the conversations, with the conversation there, Julie, in that wonderful example, in this new space of a purposeful and more values-based and more person-centered approach, driving belonging. You talked about feelings, the F word of workplaces, the feelings, our emotions. It would allow us to have these conversations earlier in the right way with the right people at the right time, so we can provide the right support and create that truly inclusive environment that you've been describing and discussing. I just absolutely loved that conversation. Thank you so much. I've been scribbling all of the words. I don't know how to summarize that connections, feelings, power, dialogue, growth, learning, excitement. And Natalie as well, watching your face when you were hearing Alicia talking about the experience of your book was just one of the most moving moments on a webcast I've had as well. So moving, emotional as well, very powerful, gets you here and here. And that's what I think HR and people can do. It is head, but it's heart, and it's also gut. And this has been a head, heart, gut conversation for me today. That's what this conversation has been, and I have loved it. And Jonathan said to me, David, share your trailblazer when you come on. He said, I don't know, all of you, but it's everybody It's everyone who's out there, because what you're saying is so profoundly powerful. But the reality is the status quo, business as usual, BAU in our workplaces is so tough to break through. So the Trailblazers to me are the people who are making what you're describing a reality, and they're fighting against business as usual. They're fighting against the status quo. We've always done it this way. This is the way it should be done. The hierarchy, the paternalistic, the systemic structural barriers to inclusion, which have become so built into our organizations, to everyone who's chipping away. And that's what we have to do. We're chipping away all the time. They're the Trailblazers. They're the ones who are making this stuff work. And I think you, I'm sure, I hope anyway, have inspired so many people to chip away and to do that work. So not much more to say other than wow, thank you.
It's our pleasure to be here today.
That was
such a great conversation.
It really was, Julia. Thank you for your wonderful chairing and facilitation and questioning, and the way your curiosity brought the conversation forward was just a delight to watch. A delight, honestly. Jonathan, I'm going to have to hand back to you because I'm going to kind of start speaking in superlatives, and no one wants that at the end of the podcast, do they?
Thanks, David. Thank you, David. I'm going to wrap up in 45 seconds, but I just want to tell all the speakers, hang in there after I say goodbye. We're going to click a picture towards the end. We missed out yesterday. But yeah, what a fantastic conversation. The chat box has been on fire by for all the speakers, and just go back there. Maybe you want to see some of the comments and some very interesting insights as well as shared by some of the viewers today. Apologies to some of the viewers who put out some really good comments. The back end wasn't catching your name, so it came as LinkedIn user, but I couldn't really associate your name to some of those comments there. And to all of you who shared your Trailblazers, Natalie, Alicia, Alyssa, Julie, feel free to name drop those names in the comment section on LinkedIn. Tag those Trailblazers you've been thinking about. Maybe that will also help us spread the word about the International People and Culture Week. You can take this far and wide. If you're watching us live, watching this on recording, repost the session, repost it with your networks, use the hashtag IPCW'24, and let's get the word out there that people and culture is happening. This has been a complete eye-opener. It's been an inspiration. I feel like it's been 3 days, and when we did the first day, I was saying to David, can it get better? And it just kept getting better. We really feel like we need a break here. Thank God the weekends here. But on Tuesday, we're back to actually celebrate some bright lights, and you'll be surprised by some of the names that we got up on the International People and Culture Awards. So join us at 1 p.m. British Summer Time on Tuesday, that's the 7th of May, live on LinkedIn for the International People and Culture Week and International People and Culture Awards. Thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to join us as a member of the PCA, once again, drop me a line at info@peopleprofessionals.org. Julie, Natalie, Alicia, Alyssa, David, thank you so much once again. I'll see you on Tuesday.
Well done, everyone. And Jonathan, again, a huge thank you to you, Jonathan, behind the scenes, making this stuff happen. You do a wonderful, wonderful job, Jonathan. Outstanding. Thank you, Jonathan.